Thank you. So, as Christina said yesterday, MND New South Wales hosted the CommSPOT workshop, and so we had 60 speech pathologists and OTs that came together from a variety of workplaces. We came together to talk, there's just some photos of the day. We came together to talk about how to best support people with MND with their communication goals in all its different forms. So face-to-face communication, online communication, using the telephone, text messaging and social networking. And we learned that maintaining social support is very important for quality of life. The day was very full, as you can see. That was sort of the outline of the day, and it required precision timekeeping and organisation on behalf of many, many staff from MND New South Wales. But there was still lots of time for chatting and social networking. We started the day by breaking into some discipline groups, and we started with a role play. So we had the OTs in one room and speech pathologists in the other, and they were based on 2 case studies. So Tom was 60 years old with flail arm, MND, and a big priority for him was being able to maintain use of his mobile phone to text message his kids, and also use Facebook on a computer to keep in touch with his fishing mates. And Carmel, in the speech pathology role play, was a 59-year-old lady with MND who was just beginning to look at communication options. So the role plays were really there we staged the role plays to highlight best practice according to some key things. First of all, the 5 basic principles of support and care management for people living with ALS and MND, the MND care approach, and also a staged person-centred approach. So the workshop was very full, and I'm aware that some of you were there yesterday, but also many of you wanted to be there but couldn't. So we thought that what we do is just briefly go through those principles now and sort of, I guess, tease out what we did in the role play and how that was used to demonstrate best practice. So first of all, if we're looking at the 5 basic principles, in the case studies, we showed that establishing goals needed to be client-led based on the individual needs and priorities of the person, and what they wish to invest time and energy in. And we also needed to consider their level of coping and their ability to take on information. Once the referral was received, we continued to link in with other team members to ensure a coordinated and integrated care plan. And the therapists in the role plays continued to touch base with the client, continued to check in if it was still a goal and a priority for them, and also set up regular reviews and, of course, held the client's information in confidence. We tried to showcase all these in the role plays. Given the unique challenges of MND, the MND care approach was developed to provide us with a person-centred way for talking with the person with MND about their unique symptom management and wellbeing and support needs, and developing strategies for meeting those needs. So utilising this approach during the role plays, we tried to ensure that both the clients and their immediate carers' needs were considered in relation to the types of communication systems that we were considering, and we were constantly linking back to the rest of the team that were involved. So the role plays were actually presented according to the 6 stages that have been developed as part of when we wrote the original Issues and Options paper. So the first stage is being the identification stage, and the person-centred outcome at this stage is that we really want people to be able to make an informed decision about their current and future communication needs. And for this to happen, it means that they need to have information early on about MND and how communication can be affected, and know what support is available should they wish to take it up. So in the case studies, the role plays, we demonstrated best practice by the fact that Tom and Carmel had been given information very early on at the point of their diagnosis, that people that they came in contact early on, such as their regional advisor, were aware of what services were provided within their local area, and that the issues that Tom and Carmel had could actually be addressed, and so then they knew who to rapidly refer on to. The referral stage, the person-centred outcome, is that we want people to receive a timely referral to the appropriate services and support. And so in the role play, we showed that that can actually be done, and that, for example, with the OT role play, because Tom had flail arm, the therapist had already flagged him as a possible referral, and he knew very much what sort of information he needed to collect at that referral stage so that he could be well prepared when he met his client. The role plays also highlighted best practice in the assessment stage, and we showed how utilising assessment frameworks relevant to speech pathology and OT practice, in particular use of tools such as the IPA, the Individually Prioritised Problem Assessment Scale, can be really helpful at establishing very early on problems in a very functional way and what the priorities are, but also using the SET framework to enhance collaborative decision making and collect information, and also the use of GAS goals to assist clients with evaluating trials at the trial and supply stage. So best practice in the implement stage was also demonstrated in the role plays, and the outcome of that is that we want the person and their family and carers to receive implementation support to ensure that the AAC or the alternate access system is being fully utilised and that the person is actually able to participate in the activities of value and importance to them. So in our role play, the therapist followed up with the client when the equipment arrived and ensured that it was set up according to not only the client but also the carer's needs, who was obviously going to be heavily involved in supporting the implementation. The final stage in our stage person is the monitoring and review, and at this stage we want the person to receive ongoing and regular monitoring to ensure a timely response as their needs change. And so in our role plays, the therapist had established a mutually agreeable way of keeping in touch with the client and actually were able to offer a timely review when their needs were changed. Now, I guess we preempted all this to say that this was in an ideal situation, but we were really encouraging therapists to think, yes, there are perhaps barriers in my workplace, but what sort of strategies could I actually start to include or pick out from that to ease the pathways, the here and now. So also during the CommSPOT day, we also reviewed the external evidence. And as our question, as OTs and speech pathologists, when we're working with our clients, it's an intervention-based question where we're asking how can we best support our clients with their communication goals. We know that the gold standard when we're looking at external evidence is systematic reviews of randomised control trials, but we also know that there's a paucity of those in this field. So we talked about how that, according to Novak's traffic light for intervention, that obviously our intervention is at the yellow traffic light. Green would be where an intervention has very high levels of evidence that it is effective, and so you would just do it. Red being there's high levels of evidence that it's contraindicated, but the majority of our work would be at the yellow, so we're encouraged to actually monitor and constantly evaluate. Because there's a paucity of good quality evidence, we also talked about that the evidence-based triage can then be used to enhance our practice, and this involves the integration of clinical expertise, patient values and the best research evidence, and we're obviously encouraged to make good use of that. So then we moved on to actually seeing some communication in action, and so there was a range of very practical examples through video of a variety of people with MND using their communication systems in a variety of ways. And we would like to thank the people that were on that video. Perhaps some of you perhaps know or recognise some of these names. We then split back into groups and spent an hour on the theory, and this was really with an emphasis on how do we actually go about assessing our clients. So in the speech pathology group, they were very much looking at assessment models, the participation model in particular, and in the OT group, we were very much looking at how we go about exploring alternate access options, what are some access hierarchies, and how we might go about sort of collecting that information to then come up with some possible solutions. The hands-on was a very popular part of the day, and this and participants actually in feedback would have liked more time on this, so perhaps this is something to take on board if we were to ever hold this again. How this actually worked, and it involved an incredible amount of organisation on behalf of MND New South Wales, but we had 11 workstations set up, and groups of 8 people would rotate around and have an opportunity to look at a variety of things. And if you can see here, it ranged from looking at the basic accessibility that's built into Android systems and iPads, so how you might just make use of everyday devices, speech generating apps on iPads, looking at switches, what is scanning, alternate mouse options, head tracking systems, mounting, and we also had an eye gaze system. And everybody has been given a cheat sheet that has information to take away on each of those areas with links to online resources as well as clinical application guidelines. So I think that's perhaps a very valuable tool. We then moved back into smaller groups, and I guess with the emphasis that we just wanted to look at the last 3 stages of that stage person approach, which is the trial and supply, which is often a very difficult stage, implementation, monitoring and review, and we wanted to explore barriers, but also again, really look at how we can ease those pathways. And then putting it into action was the final stage, and that was a very engaging one hosted by Sarah Solomon from Calvary Healthcare in Bethlehem. She brought along 4 very different scenarios, and people split up into small groups and came together to talk about the assessment process and then also possible solutions. And really the level of insight and problem solving from the group, given that we had a range of people there, from very experienced therapists right to those that perhaps hadn't worked in the field before, we were very impressed with basically what people were coming up with. So in terms of what we've learnt from the day, I just wanted to go through a little bit of that now. So from the small groups, we explored barriers, as I said before, but we also wanted to explore strategies that could be put in place right here and now to improve our practice. And a huge range of brainstorming had occurred, and I'd just like to give you a taste of some of the key suggestions that were broken up, and I've broken them up into the stages. So maybe, again, some of you could take some of these away with you. So in the identification stage, I guess this is where we're really wanting to ensure that people with MND, as a need arises, that they're able to be quickly picked up and identified so that they can be linked into an appropriate service. And that doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So some of the strategies that people came up with, that we have to really ensure that the conversation about what support is available happens very early on. For example, I think sometimes people aren't aware that OTs can provide support when devices such as a mobile phone just become difficult to use in a standard way, that there can often be just some simple strategies to use to enhance that. And so it's very important that that information is provided to people with MND, but also those that they may be linked into early on, such as regional advisors, even neurologists that they may come in contact with. So we need to establish better links with other team members in the community, and also maybe look at how early education about our role can be done through support groups and other info sheets. So perhaps ensuring that you get invited along, say, to a monthly coffee morning or support group could be one strategy. So at that level, we're really wanting to just make sure that people are aware that support is available. In terms of the referral stage, we're really wanting to ensure that that's as streamlined as possible, and that people know where to refer to. And so some strategies were, maybe we need to start up some regular MND team meetings in our area, particularly those in rural regions. And sometimes, you may not have referrals for a while, but then suddenly a little cluster may appear. So maybe that then would be the precursor to say, okay, well, perhaps now for the next few months we need to actually have these meetings. And also that MND New South Wales does keep a record of often who is involved with their members, and that could often be a source of information for people. At the assessment stage, I think a lot of people felt that utilising assessment tools such as the SET framework would be very valuable, and that really it is very important to support clients at that very early stage about setting priorities and very functional goals, and that there are some tools to do that, such as the IPA. Or even GAS goals, and really helping them to establish priorities and what they're really willing or able to invest time and energy in is a very important part of that. Not forgetting low-tech options is obviously a very big thing. And also presenting options confidently. That we know from the research that some people have a lot of difficulty accepting AAC through many, many reasons. And Sarah from Bethlehem was able to share with us that often it's just a matter of how you actually present something. And if you very much present it in that it's going to add value, that if you do this way, it's going to give you more time and energy so that you can do other things that are more important to you. So I think sometimes it's how the message is delivered can be very important. In terms of the trial and supply, again, this is always a contentious issue. Where do we get equipment from to trial? Where do people even get equipment from once they actually want something to use? Some of the strategies, it's not perfect, but is utilise supplies more. Supplies do have loan pools of equipment that we can access, and even other agencies, and we had somebody here yesterday from the ILC, Independent Living Centre, where they actually have a range of equipment on display that you can actually make an appointment and go in and actually try then and there. And there's also a range of excellent online resources, and in the feedback that we've collected, people have given some examples of some really great blogs that can support setup of equipment. Hiring equipment is also an option for many suppliers, and also exploring alternative funding options. So people yesterday talked a little bit about the Walter Eliza Trust, and also community options can sometimes be. So we're going to collect this information, I gather, and have it somewhat available. A big one, and I think it came up a lot, and I'm hoping that this is a big learning outcome for a lot of people, is that it's very important at the trial stage, though, to set realistic goals and really ensure that the client is aware of what actually is going to be involved if they decide to uptake this system. It's particularly important for higher tech systems that they often do involve a lot of investment of time and energy by them, their carers, but also the therapists, who then need to continue in, and clients perhaps need to sometimes think, do they actually want that level of intervention? In terms of the implementation stage, that's really where we were looking at how we can best support carers, particularly with supporting. And so people talked about, providing information to carers about how to use the equipment in a variety of ways, and even just videoing the session, just getting your phone out and videoing key things and then sending that to the carer so they can watch it over and over as they need to. And also on YouTube, there is a multitude now of resources available. Use supplies more for technical troubleshooting. Therapists talked a lot about hours and hours and hours of being invested in going back, troubleshooting. And obviously in the new era of the NDIS, we're going to have to really justify our input. And I think, and even in my field now at work, we're having to just utilise supplies more for that sort of technical troubleshooting. And again, as I said, more time and discussion with goal setting at the trial phase. Before you even get to this implementation phase, if the trial's been done well, everyone's aware, you often can avoid some of these problems. And in terms of monitoring and review, really regular use of email is a really good way to keep in touch, have regular team meetings with others involved to review. Know your type of MND and general trajectory can be useful, so you know sort of what would be the rough idea, time when you would need to get back in touch. And also telehealth, many said, is a good way to keep in touch with specialists as well as the patient and carer. So the feedback was generally very positive, I'd have to say, from the course. We had some constructive feedback too on how perhaps it could be done differently, but generally people found it very informative. They really enjoyed having time to collaborate with other like-minded therapists, and enjoyed particularly the hands-on and the clinical scenarios. So just lastly, one of the outcomes of this is that a CommSPOT face group has been developed. It's a closed group, and to join you need to be an OT or a speech pathologist and also a member of the SIG workshop, the SIG group, sorry. Yeah. So that's it.